As Executive Director at LDS, I want to tell you just a tiny bit about what we do, and then I'm going to give a territory acknowledgement, a little bit of a grounding for this evening, and pass it over to our host and panelists. So LDS is a charity. We have been in operation for over 50 years now. We work with all children, youth, and adults who have suspected or diagnosed learning disabilities or differences. And we work to empower them through education and through other related supports to achieve success in school and beyond. We have over 17 programs now, and we're working very hard with students around British Columbia to help them build confidence and find success. We know that a lot of our students and the families that we work with have many different intersectional challenges that they face, and that's one of the reasons that we like to also, as part of our charitable work, provide resources, education, and strategies to the families that we serve. This is one of those resources and strategies that you're joining us for this evening. I'd like to thank our panelists, who you will get to know a little bit better. They'll have a chance to introduce themselves, but I'm very honored that people from different organizations and with different lived experiences will be joining us tonight to share their knowledge, their experiences, and their ideas and tools and strategies with you. I would like to also invite you, if you haven't already, posed a question, a comment, a concern in the YouTube comments. Please do so. We will be monitoring that throughout this evening. And we are gathered here in this area in East Vancouver on the Indigenous territories of the Coast Salish peoples, including the Squamish, the Musqueam, and the Tsleil-Waututh. But we know that we have people joining us throughout British Columbia and across Canada on the land known as Turtle Island, so we would like to acknowledge that as well. And further acknowledge the seriousness of what we're addressing tonight. We're talking about issues around education, we're talking about issues around mental health, which we know are closely tied with our colonial history in Canada. So acknowledging that, and also the sensitivity of that to the children, the families, the caregivers, the friends, and the communities of all of those impacted by these really serious topics. While these things are serious, we do want to offer some hope and some strategies and some great stories of success for you tonight. And so with that in mind, I'm going to turn it over to our very capable and inspiring storyteller, Wilter Mustapich. He is the founder of the Boys Club of BC, and he will be moderating our panel tonight.
Thank you very much, Rachel. Appreciate your kind words in the introduction here. Good evening, everybody. My name is Wilter Mustapich. I'm the president of the Boys Club Network here in British Columbia, and I'll tell you a little more about that in a few moments. But I'm really excited to be a part of this tonight, and I appreciate the invitation. I had a chance to meet with some of our panelists here just a few moments ago. I'm totally intimidated and humbled, and I think you're going to find that there's a wealth of knowledge here that's just going to blow your minds. It's going to be a great night. Get those questions ready. Have questions sent in to the site here. We'd love to answer them, and we have a live audience as well. There are people in here. You guys can clap every once in a while. We don't have any prizes under your chairs, but the prizes will be in your head as you leave, because you're going to leave with a lot of information and some great tools. Why are we doing this tonight? Well, it's in recognition of May as Mental Health Awareness Month. LDS, or the Learning Disabilities Society, is launching this free mental health and learning differences forum for you, the parents, guardians, caregivers, educators, members of the public, and kids all across British Columbia and Canada. So why this event? Let me just go through a few quick bullets here. Many children and youth experience challenges with mental health and learning differences, so ADHD, dyslexia, and many more. Self-reported data from the Canadian Census evidence that youth with learning differences aged 15 to 21 experience higher rates of mental health challenges than their peers, with 46% of male students and 65% of female students impacted. Mental health challenges, including anxiety and depression, can be compounded by feelings of shame, stigma, low self-esteem, with students at a greater risk for bullying and social isolation. Supporting children and youth in navigating learning and mental health challenges empowers them to recognize their own strengths, gain confidence, and achieve lifelong confidence and success inside and outside the classroom and beyond. Thank you, Dr. Jenn Fane, for those comments. As they develop, children and youth need an expanding set of tools, support, and self-advocacy skills. And finding these supports can be difficult. That's why we're here tonight, because I think you're going to find that some of the supports sitting at this table may meet your needs, and if not, they will certainly lead you in a direction that can make a difference in someone's life that you love and care about. This panel is an opportunity to learn from experts and individuals with lived experience and be equipped with the knowledge, support, and skills to support your family and friends. So let's meet the panelists. What I'd like to do is I'm going to ask the panelists. We'll start from the young lady on my left here, Lyn Heinemann. And Lynn, I'd like you to just tell the audience a little bit about yourself, your organization, and what you hope to bring to the conversation tonight, and we'll just work our way across the table.
Thanks, Walter. You're very generous calling me young. I appreciate that. I'm Lynn. I am a clinical coordinator and an occupational therapist at the Foundry Vancouver Granville Clinic. And so our center, when I talk about Foundry, it's a bit of a mixed bag because I work at one clinic, and so I'm really familiar with the services at our clinic, but Foundry, of course, is a provincial network, and there's centers in many communities across BC. So I can speak a little bit, and I know the people will be watching from elsewhere in the province, so I can speak a little bit about Foundry more broadly, as well as the specialized services that we offer at our clinic. I've been working in mental health with youth and young adults for about 20 years. So primarily the work that I've been doing is with youth with really complex needs, a lot of street-involved youth, youth with pretty serious mental health diagnoses. So I can bring some of that to the table, but also just able to speak to more broadly about mental health services, public health, and how it intersects with some of the challenges that we're talking about here with differences in learning. So that's me.
Thank you.
Should I just pass it on?
Just pass it
there
on.
you go.
Wow, awesome. Thank you very much. Thanks, Walter. Good evening, everyone. My name's Laufer, Indigenous Youth Worker with the Royal City Alternate Program and the Power Alternate Program. The junior program is for 8, 9, and 10, and the Power program's from 10, 11, 12. As the Indigenous Youth Worker there, my want, need, focus is on Indigenous youth and helping them navigate the system with other staff members. Could be counselors, could be clinicians external to the system, or with the ministry itself, or with their own parents and with themselves. So part of my job is to outreach to them, get the help that they need, whatever that looks like, connect with them, and hopefully over the length of time, being able to have them graduate, and then maybe they join up with LDS and carry on. Who knows? Anyway, that's about me. Thank you.
Might want to keep that down. Worked out the mic situation here. Oh, is this one on? There we go. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Jenn Fane. I'm the Director of Education here at LDS. I began my journey in education as a classroom teacher in the New Westminster School District. Actually, got to work with Lee and the wonderful work that he does before moving into teacher education, both in Australia and Canada, and educational research in the areas of childhood well-being and the impacts on families navigate services and sometimes systems and services that don't really support families and navigating them easily. I have the privilege of working with over 500 families a year at LDS across 17 programs and 8 locations. We do amazing work, and the favorite part of my job is the stories of our learners as they move through often challenging times, work through navigating a system that is not well set up to support children with complex learning challenges or families that don't have the social capital to easily navigate those systems. And the stories of success as our students often persevere through challenging academic, social, emotional, and personal challenges. So I'm really pleased to sort of join the panel and have the opportunity to share some of those experiences and also some of the stories of how our students and families have persevered through challenging times through to many, many successful times.
My name is Willow MacDonald, and I'm a content creator. I make content about the LGBTQ community. I also make content about mental health and just getting out in nature. I found as myself who I battle with depression and anxiety. Being out in nature, being outside has helped me so much. And I know that it's sometimes hard for people to find that light, to find, the resources. And sometimes just going outside can really make a difference. So I've been motivated to kind of use my voice and make videos, make content for people to access and hopefully inspire them to, one, be themselves and feel confident in themselves, but to get outside and have a little bit of hope. I'm also very lucky that I'm part of the adult program at LDS. I have dyslexia, and so I've been able to I've had so much shame around, one, my mental health, but with my learning differences. And if it wasn't for LDS, I wouldn't be sitting here, actually. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. My name's Samara Liberman. I'm the programs manager for the Stigma-Free Society. So I have a background in education. I have a master's in teaching. I have a bachelor's degree in equity studies and a professional development certification in early years mental health. And the Stigma-Free Society is over a decade-old Canadian registered charity, and we work at reducing stigma of all kinds, but we focus specifically on the stigma around mental health. We also look at how different forms of stigma and the stigma around mental health often overlap and intersect. So our main resource that we have for young people is our Student Mental Health Toolkit. And we also have a presentations program where we go into schools and our presenters share their lived experience with mental health and a different intersecting form of stigma that they've experienced in their life. And we really believe in the power of narrative and people sharing their stories. And I'm so happy to be here today to talk about that and to share my story too.
Thank you very much. Tell you a little bit about the Boys Club Network. We're a mentorship program for boys ages 13 to 19, sometimes a little older than that. And at our core, what we try to do is teach young men what it means to be a good man. And what does that mean? Well, how does a good man treat women, family, friends, community, and themselves? Left onto their own resources, they're looking at social media, rap music, broken homes, maybe not having a lot of positive male role models in their lives. And so we try to fill that gap in our own way. We currently exist in over 20 school districts across BC and close to 30 schools. We're as far north as Nunavut. They meet once a week at minus 58 degrees in the winter, and the boys show up, which I tell my boys, if they can be there, you can be here. We're in North Vancouver, West Vancouver, Abbotsford, Surrey, Vancouver Island, the interior, Kamloops, a lot of places, and there's interest across the country. There are a lot of issues affecting boys today. Boys commit 80% of all suicides as compared to 20% with girls. For every girl that drops out of high school, 5 boys drop out. Now, as a man who has, and my wife and I have 2 daughters and a son, there seem to be a lot of supports for our girls, but not so many for our boys. Unless they're an athlete or a straight A student, there's nothing out there for boys. But we have a lot of programs for girls, which is wonderful because 25 years ago, it was the other way around. And so that's why those programs came into place. But the pendulum has swung right past the boys, and now fewer than 40% of post-secondary enrollment is male. Scholarships at schools, on average, 30% go to the boys, and the boys just aren't being inspired to move forward. So we're trying to fill that gap. We've heard the word HOPE here a few times, and that's an acronym that we use a lot. It's a part of our program. And for us, HOPE is, the letter H is hope, opportunity, positive mentors that we bring in to speak to the boys, and education. We try to get them into post-secondary. We've got some very cool partnerships with BCIT and UBC and a few other institutions, and we've had 70 boys go through BCIT, not just in trades, but in business. We have 1 guy that's in med school right now at UBC, and 2 that became RCMP officers, and I can tell you right now, they could have been on the other side of those tracks as well. So we know it works, and our biggest supporters are women. I proudly say, because they look at what we're doing and they're saying we need more of that. Anybody that's got a partner who's male or works with men or has grown up with men or brothers will say, yeah, and jokingly, a lot of women will say, can my husband come to your meetings? Or my boyfriend or my workmate. So that's what we're about. We'll talk more about that as we progress through tonight. And I'm really excited to be here as well and proud to be a part of this panel because unbelievable. We had a little chat beforehand, and I just can't wrap my head around what these amazing people are doing for kids all over Lower Mainland and beyond. So congratulations to all of you. The word ADHD comes up a lot here and has come up in your conversations. I wonder if we might start with that. That seems to be a very common thing in schools and something that a lot of parents are wrestling with their own children at home and even adults, quite frankly. So who'd like to start? Who would like to address how you and your organization might work with boys and girls who'd be experiencing issues around ADHD? Can I go to my friend at the Foundry to start?
You can. I mean, yeah, ADHD, I mean, we certainly have youth that come to our clinic presenting with ADHD. And so Foundry itself, I think I'll speak to this question from a more from like the provincial Foundry model, because I think it's probably more helpful in that way. So Foundry itself, the model is based on, it's an integrated youth service. So the idea is that multiple services are housed under one roof that support youth like across their health needs, with a focus, of course, on mental health and well-being. And so it's a step care model. So youth can enter a Foundry and receive the level of service that is sort of that meets their exact needs. So for more youth who are presenting with more acute or more complex needs, then they receive more specialized services and more focused wraparound services, and youth can come in sort of with a one-off situation and receive like brief counseling, for example, and then be exited and referred on to other services. So ADHD at Foundry, we have a lot of youth who might present with ADHD, and so depending on what their needs are and what other co-occurring things they have going on with them, we would support them to reach their goals around like an intervention that focuses on supporting them in that way. So, I mean, we don't specifically have at our center programs that support youth just with ADHD, because typically when youth have ADHD, they often will have other situations that are co-occurring with that. Anxiety, depression, like other learning challenges. Maybe they're experiencing other barriers to success in their life. So we sort of like work with the whole person, try to determine what exactly is going on with them, and then work to support them individually to meet those goals. And so if we're not the right center for it, if we don't have exactly what they need, then we'll refer out to other services to help support that. And so I think, our center specifically is run within the public health model, so we're funded by Providence Healthcare. And so we would, if the youth is coming with that diagnosis, then we'll make sure we have a primary care clinic at our center, so we'll make sure that they're receiving like the right medications if medications are called for. If they're not using medications, if they're not wanting those medications, then we have various programs that can also support them through occupational therapy or other psychosocial rehab interventions that might work with them to help build skills around supporting them to mediate what's happening for them, or like what the effects of ADHD are in their lives, if that makes sense. So it's like a holistic, we sort of look at it in a holistic way, like how is ADHD affecting you? How is it preventing you from functioning in the way that you would want to function in your life? And then what can we do as a team or as an individual clinician to support you from there, if that makes sense. But all of the work that we do is sort of done at individual levels. So, it depends on the youth and what their needs are and what their goals are at our center. And then at a provincial level, I think most other foundries are not embedded in public health in the way that ours are. They're run by a nonprofit in their individual communities, with the idea that multiple services are housed under one roof. So my understanding of the way that other centers run is that if there's a youth who's coming in with complex needs or with just presenting, like the primary presenting diagnosis of ADHD, there will be in-house within that Foundry a service that is specialized and can support the youth with their presenting challenge. Does that make sense? So it looks different at every Foundry depending on what services they have, depending on what the needs are in that community. So, yeah. That was a very long answer. It depends, but it's treated holistically, individually, and with a real view to the context of what the youth or young adult is experiencing as a result of their diagnosis. We're not we're not looking at what the deficit is. We're looking at what the goal is and what things we can put in place to support youth to reach that goal. Does that make sense? Yeah. So that's Foundry. Who's next?
I'd like to ask Jenn to jump in on this same question about working with kids that are experiencing issues around ADHD.
Yeah, ADHD is quite a tricky one for a lot of families that we work with in multiple ways. One of which is that it is not presently a diagnosis that comes with any funding into the school system right now. So a lot of parents who are going through assessments to try and identify sort of why their child might be experiencing the challenges that they are, or having the interactions that they are within the school setting, and they finally have this information. Great, we have a diagnosis. This can be quite powerful for families to have this information, and then it's like, okay, great. So then, what does that mean? And currently, with the funding model, that doesn't actually change anything. That in of itself does not actually prefer supports to children in the school system, because it's not a diagnosis that currently has additional funding attached to it. So it can be really tricky to kind of get all the way through that process to realize that the current funding model doesn't recognize that a child with ADHD likely needs additional supports in a school setting, which many children do. Additionally, for young children in the preschool population, it can be very challenging sometimes for even when going through a fulsome assessment with a psychologist to determine ASD, autism from ADHD too, for some children as well. And it can be tricky because one diagnosis does come with funding and support, and the other one does not as well too. So currently, families are in a system which is not needs-based, it is diagnoses-based, and that is actually really unfair because, well, I actually feel very strongly, and LDS feels very strongly that a diagnoses-based system is unfair, because you might have a child with autism who needs less support than a child with ADHD in a classroom environment. The diagnosis in of itself does not, as Lynn was saying, the diagnosis in of itself doesn't tell us what actually the child needs to be successful in the classroom, in recreation, at home, in any type of setting. So it can be very helpful to have an ADHD diagnosis to understand, oh, that is why, I'm experiencing this, or that's why I'm struggling with this. But the fact that there aren't supports that come layer on easily from ADHD is quite a challenge. The also significant challenge I want to highlight about ADHD is that individuals with ADHD generally have executive functioning deficits, which are deficits or challenges with attention, memory, organization, and planning. And those skills are the building blocks of learning, essentially. If you can't attend, if you're unable to focus, if you're unable to plan, you can't not do the academic skills that school might demand, such as writing or remembering the information for a test, or being able to collect data to present in a chart or a graph, or even those more sort of complex skills as, that a teen wants to go and get a job. Okay, well, first I need to organize all my information on a resume. Then I need to go out and I need to figure out where I'm going and organize my route and go out and do all these things. I need to talk to people. And then I need to, it becomes really overwhelming when those skills don't come really naturally to young people. And we can apply that to the workforce, to university, or to just general life tasks. For parents with ADHD as well, that often ADHD is another disorder that often runs in families. So many parents actually learn in backwards ways that they may have ADHD after realizing that their children have ADHD, and this might be something that the actual whole family benefits from support that's not there. So it can be really challenging. The ADHD diagnosis can be a really challenging journey for families for that reason. And LDS and I argue really strongly that a needs-based approach, which is sort of how, as Lynn explained, is Foundry is working towards, is actually what is the need. So what is the goal of this child, of this young person? What supports do they need in order to get to that goal? Focus on the function rather than the diagnoses. And it would be powerful if our systems actually supported families in being positioned like that in schools.
I see a lot of nodding heads on the end. Would somebody else like to jump in on this one? Yeah, for sure. Sure. Yeah, thank you.
So, just to speak from the perspective of Stigma-Free, what we do. So we do more like education-based, and like I said, we have our presentations program, and one of our presenters is a 17-year-old who has ADHD, and he is incredible and is so engaging and so interesting, and the students love hearing from him because he's young and they can relate to him and relate to his story, and he speaks very candidly and very vulnerably about having ADHD and what that diagnosis has been like for him, and he kind of explains a little bit about how his brain operates and kind of talks people through what a day might look like for him, or sitting in a classroom, and how it might be harder to concentrate. And I feel like the way that he frames his struggles is really interesting for people who may also be experiencing that, and also for people who don't have that experience. So he's a really great resource for us to kind of do that work of making connections and having young people understand that there are people out there who are like them and who have similar struggles or who have very different experiences. He also actually wrote a lesson plan for us. So one of the things that we have on our student mental health toolkit are lesson plans that are all BC curriculum aligned. We also have Manitoba curriculum aligned lesson plans now. And he wrote a lesson plan for us talking about ADHD and the power of talking about his experience and sharing his story. And he has a TED Talk as well. He's an incredible young person, just to hype him up for a second. And so that's kind of the work that we do, is kind of listening to other people's stories, getting those stories into classrooms around Canada, and making sure that young people see that, you know, there are stories like that out there, and there's also hope. He's going to university in the fall, and he's super excited and shares that as well, and all of the things that he's been able to accomplish, and talks, you know, very openly about all the people in his family who have ADHD and different mental health challenges. And yeah, so that's a little bit about the way that we've approached that topic, and he's an amazing resource for us about that. So,
Willow, would you have anything to add to that conversation?
I don't have I haven't been diagnosed with ADHD, but I don't know if anyone's familiar, but what's happening right now, especially online, is a lot of adults are realizing that they do have ADHD, or just, again, people sharing stories. The great thing about online is the more that we talk, the more we share, the more we like say our things or tell our stories, more people have these aha moments of like, hey, that sounds like me, or you're pulling from other stories and you're like, that's a little bit of me, that's a little bit, or also being like, maybe I should go check this out. As someone who has dyslexia, I was told as a child to kind of just, this is what you have and your life's just going to be hard. And it wasn't until I was older to realize that, like, no, there's help, there's LDS, you know, there's things that, like, you know, you're not, there doesn't have to be the shame factor. And if you have ADHD or any of these things, your life doesn't have to be this bold or this huge thing. It's like, people want to help. You're not that different, and like, you're amazing, and it's okay to ask for help, but also, like, you don't have to be like this special person that sits in the corner or doesn't get to do the things because you have ADHD, because you have dyslexia, because you have a learning disability, or anything, or mental health. Like, you can live your life and live it to the fullest. And so I think, if, you know, with people on with my content, or just people that watch me, my biggest thing is just like, try to release that shame factor. And that takes time. That takes a long time. But there is no shame in having any of these things: ADHD, dyslexia, anxiety, depression. If you have it all, like, there is no shame in that. And that's the big takeaway I could give.
Well said. Lee, just wondering, working with the kids that you work with as well, and I'm sure you've seen young men and women with issues such as this. How do you manage that? How do you get them the help they need?
That's a lot to say, Walter. Wow. Well, how do you encapsulate all that? You see the diagnosis, referring back to what Jen said before, which was the school system isn't set up right now. They've taken ADHD off, so there's no supports. So what they would do is share the supports, perhaps, if the EA was in a room, or the youth worker happens to be there. So the teacher's strapped with all that extra work that has to be done. For my focus would be to, especially for the Indigenous youth, there's many layers that go on to being who they are in that moment. Not only with their undiagnosed ADHD, Well, they may know it, but everybody else goes, we're not quite sure, and we can't quite go there. But they know they have it. Their family knows they have it. So my job is to go out there and support the family, the parents, find out who has it, who passed it down, how their family structure is, work within their family structure. It might not be together, it might be apart. Getting them to work and bringing them together as a team in some way, shape, or form. If it's just one side, then maybe bring in the other side and help them focus on that youth in a way that's uplifting. So again, going back to many words have been said, one that comes to my mind is what? Hope, getting rid of the shame. That's a big one. That's for the Indigenous youth. Indigenous youth is a big one. Because in the societies that we've grown up in, myself included, there's been a pathway of expectations that are lower. Now there's the colonial folks. They come in, if you're a blonde hair, you have straight teeth, you have an uplifting personality, and you're bubbly, oh, you have ADHD, you'll be okay, we'll work on that. But if you don't, and if you don't fit into that norm, that particular fit, then the expectation is lower. So that'll be okay. So there's all those biases that come into play, plus their own, and what they've already experienced. So, and that leads into many other subject areas and more conversation as we go through the evening. But right now, I really focus on lifting them up and working with the rest of the team that I have within the schools that I work with. And I'm itinerant, so I go between alternate programs and middle school. So I can see them coming through the middle school, the one middle school I work at, and help the team decide whether they could be transferred over to the alternate programs, helpful, smaller classes, one-on-one work. They can see what's going on, perhaps get more resourcing, or maybe it's just something else within the school system, within a regular stream that they can work with. So my focus, again, is to lift them up and see where we can take the family also as a complete unit.
The word shame comes up all across the board here. And I know that when I've worked with young men and women in schools, I was a vice principal for quite a while, trying to get them to get that help can be the biggest obstacle, getting them in the door. I've referred several kids to the Foundry and other places, and no, I'm good. And the same thing with adults as well, even within my own family, no, if I go there, that means I'm not right. Something's off with me, so I'm not going to do that. Once we get them past that little hurdle, they come back every time just better suited to really deal with their issues. I'm just curious how each of you, and you've answered a big chunk of that, Lee, right now with the Indigenous community and getting out and talking to the families, talking to the parents, talking to, I'm assuming, elders and others, and getting them on board to support the kids that need this help, or even the adults that need this help. I'm wondering what the people of this panel do to encourage people to come in and get your help. Can I pass the mic all the way down on this one? We'll start at that end. Yeah, you've got the big mic over there.
It was ready for me. The big thing that we do at Stigma-Free is talking about stigma and reducing stigma. So the way that we do that is through education primarily. So we know that a lot of educators want to talk about these conversations and want to talk about mental health and want to talk about stigma, but don't really know where to start. It's very daunting and it's a lot to bring in, and you want to do it as consciously as possible and as effectively as possible. So that's where we like to step in and provide resources for educators so that they can have these conversations with young people and to bring these topics up in a way that's really engaging and really interesting and activities-based, and also stories-based, and making sure that young people are learning from other people. And I think that's kind of the big thing that we like to talk about is, how sharing your own story and how learning from other people is kind of the first way to break down stigma. And we have so many amazing presenters who share different stories, and those stories are the connector between people, and vulnerability is the way that we all can kind of bridge that gap and learn from each other. And when we have presenters go into classrooms and share their stories so vulnerably, students ask questions and they engage and they learn, and that's a really phenomenal way to start breaking down that stigma, because there's someone right in front of them who maybe looks different to them or has a very different story, a very different lived experience, and by connecting with them and asking them questions and having that safe space to have that dialogue and conversation, they're learning and they're growing and they're understanding somebody else's perspective. We also do that through our lesson plans, and we wanted to make sure that we're always bringing the curriculum in where we can so that teachers can kind of check that off their list. And in the lesson plans, it's kind of a way to start the conversations in classrooms, and we've had really great feedback from educators that that's a starting point. And then from there, they bring in different conversations and they look at different things, and all the topics are about mental health and stigma, but also the intersections of all of these different things. And I think a lot of shame and a lot of stigma comes from the lack of understanding of how all of those things kind of intersect and overlap. And when we understand that we're all complete people with very different parts of our identities, and all of those parts are so important, and we need to acknowledge them and look at them and talk about them. That's kind of the way that we like to work at overcoming shame and stigma. It's just stories and people sharing about who they are and what they bring to the table and the things that they've overcome, and the things that they've struggled with too.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, to talk more about the shame thing, that's honestly my biggest, still to this day, is the biggest hurdle. But I find when we take back, like, if we're able to tell our stories or we're able to use our words, you start to take your power back. As you kind of say your own story, say what you're struggling with, even if you have, like, I have shame, you're getting power back. That shame is starting to just break down every time you do that. And when I make videos online, they're mostly about me having shame, and I'm just putting it out there. And it's really scary, but it's so beautiful. If you ever go read some of the comments, is that I'm just being as vulnerable as I can. I'm crying at times. It's like therapy for me. It's so beautiful to hear other people, one, relate to me, also being like, this touched me, and they tell me about their story, and then we're sharing more, and it's just this great conversation. I think when we're not talking about things, that's where the shame comes more, because if you look different, if you don't fit into the box, then you're like, do I just be quiet? Like, what do I do? But if we talk more and we're saying things, then we're like, oh, okay, you feel it too. I'm not so different. Or, okay, like, we can make this little tribe, or we can be this little group. And there is such a power in numbers. I've seen it, especially online. I know there's like some negative things online, but from somebody who came out late in life, I came out because of online, because people shared their stories, and then I shared my stories. And it's just this beautiful waterfall. And I've been able to talk about mental health and shame. And now I have help through LDS with my dyslexia. You're talking to someone who's 34 years old, and like, I'm just getting help now. And I'm like, oh, I could have used this a long time ago, but I'm getting the help now, and it's never too late. And that's my biggest thing, is shame is like, you have the power. You have the power to break that down. We can do it together. The more we share, we just take our power back, and then that shame will go away. I promise you. So if you're somebody that's like, you're having a bit of shame, have a conversation with somebody. Write it down. It doesn't matter. I promise you, each day you will get your power back, and that shame will break down. You're looking at someone who did it, and I still have to work on it every day, but I think the more we have these conversations, the more we share, the more vulnerability, the less people can feel alone. And when we feel alone, the shame goes away.
Thanks, Willow. I think, the lived experiences of individuals who've had to face, the shame and stigma that society unfortunately attaches to diverse experiences. It's so powerful, and I think how organizations can really help support that movement, and I include LDS in that, is to actually just create safe spaces and neuro-affirming spaces where the experiences of neurodiverse individuals, or individuals that felt like they've not belonged, that they've not been included, that they've not had opportunities, are completely turned upside down, and creating spaces where that breadth of experience is centered and those opportunities really exist. Why I think the programs and the opportunities at LDS are so powerful is because they are one-to-one, they are a small group, which means that the individual's experiences are centered, and that they're no longer lost in that shuffle of, I'm that one different person in that group, or I'm the person who's not being heard, I'm the person who's not being included, I'm not the person who's not seeing myself reflected in my teachers or my family or my all the environments that I'm in. I was raised by a parent with severe learning disabilities, and I never had a name for it growing up. It was just this sort of thing that was never mentioned or never talked about, and it was just known that my mom couldn't do very basic tasks, and no one really knew why. And we grew up at kind of being a joke at her expense. Why those executive function skills were so challenging, or why basic math skills were so challenging. And it's really powerful for me now to be at an organization facilitating conversations, facilitating opportunities, facilitating young people making connections with other young people who have similar experiences. One of the things I'm most proud of at LDS is we now have some social programming run by neurodiverse specialists for neurodiverse youth, and it is a safe space that centers the neurodiverse experience, and it's a space where neurotypical experience is not welcome or helpful. It's a space that we need to step back from and create those spaces. We have summer camps. They're one of my favorite programs here. And we have a mobile classroom out in our parking lot that is decorated by an artist with learning disabilities. And we had our campers up and walking around it. And like, who drew this bus anyways? Like, who designed this? And I was like, oh, it's actually a renowned artist who has a learning disability. And they're like, I have a learning disability. And the friend next to her, I have a learning disability too. And everyone's like, wait a second, we all have learning disabilities? And it's beautiful. These are grade 4 students, and maybe they didn't know why they were at the camp. Maybe they didn't know why they're interacting with LDS or why they're here, but it's a really powerful opportunity for them to be like, wow, like, I am one of us. Like, I belong, I'm here, and like, look at all the powerful things we can do. And I think creating safe spaces is essential if we're wanting to encourage individuals to let down stigma and shame, because society is not allowing them to do that, and we need to shift things so that is possible.
Wow. That's
Children, you learn so much from children.
We do. We have to keep doing that. I thought about a few students that I've had in my time, and the one most recent that pops into my head is a student who was a little bit artsy, came in from the Okanagan, and had to come to the big city. Now imagine you're coming from the Okanagan. Not Kelowna. Kelowna is almost like a big city on its own. It's almost the size of maybe Burnaby. But I'm thinking a smaller place. That's big Sorrento or something like that, a small place. And you're coming into a big city, and you have all of this amazingness at your fingertips. You have your snaps, you have your Facebook, you have Instas, you have your YouTube Reels, you got your shorts, you have all these things just pummeling you all the time. Now, if you have ADHD, wow, I'm getting fed. But if you don't, let's just say you're bored. Let's just say you have nothing going on. Let's just say your family is not functioning in an atypical way, which society would consider atypical. 2.1 parents, the 1.2 dog, and you have children, et cetera, and you fit that norm, but yours does not. So what do you do in this big city coming from there? You try to find friends, right? And make those connections so you don't feel alone. So working with this one young boy, he was just lost, but he was following, but he was artsy. So again, going with something common to work with him, but he wouldn't want to share it because there's shame around that. There's shame around it. Or you're just an artist. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of the society's need to go doctors, lawyers, accountants, things that make money, versus how do we lift them up in different ways? What's their skill? And this particular student liked art, but also liked a different kind of art and drawing. Was not connected. So working with that student, one of my favorite things to do is to find that little bit of a wedge, to find out with this student, and it could be a non-Indigenous student also, to find a way just to find a commonality between both of us, to maybe get that friendship going a little bit. And it might take, well, middle school time. I have them from grade 6 to grade 8. I might not see them or connect with them for 3 years. I might connect with them right away. But to connect with them in a small way and then build on that, much like art. You start drawing a circle, and then you grow from there. And it could be a van around town. They could start with something like a tag, and you go from a tag into some street art, and then it develops from there. And we can start working with the student to see the possibilities for themselves. This particular student had lots of things going on in their family, lots of things going on with his family. So with my outreach and going and connecting, and with the rest of the team, working with the rest of the team that I have with me and behind me, outreach to the family, support the parents. Continuously going out there and doing work with the parents, being connected, and knowing how to relate to them. No, I would take that back. Understand who they are on a personal level, so that they know that there's hope. That's a big one. It's one thing to lift up the student, but then the student leaves your premises and goes wherever they need to go to, wherever they're going to go to. What about at home? So we work with the home, get in there in a soft way. Always have to be granted access, for lack of a better term, allowed in, invited, there we go. Invited in, whatever that looks like. And it may take a long time, but the basic idea is to support the family, to support the youth, to get them into places like LDS and get things going, right? And a bigger team approach. Anyway, thanks.
Thank you.
I totally lost track of what the original question was.
How do you encourage young people to come and seek your services, to come through the front door and not be intimidated or feel that they're somehow broken by just admitting that they're there?
Right. Well, it's not really a problem we have because we're public health, so youth get referred and they need to see a psychiatrist, or so that it's not a problem getting people through the front door. But I think our team does a really great job. We really work on an attachment-based model, so we take the time, like right from psychiatrists all the way down to peer support workers. We take the time to really get to know the clients that we serve individually and understand what their needs are and what their strengths are, what their barriers are. And so, I mean, I think a lot of the folks that we work with have really sort of complex needs, and so there's a lot of power. And a lot of the young people that we work with have sort of experienced a lot of intersectionality with multiple systems by the time they come to see us. We primarily serve young adults. Most of the people, I think 20% of the clients that come, of the youth that come into our center are 18 and under, and the rest are sort of 19 to 25 and 19 to 24. And so, so typically by the time we're sort of seeing youth, many of them have really been through multiple systems. And so I think we do a really great job of seeing those individuals and working with them on an individual basis and helping them to understand, like, you know, from an adult perspective, sort of many of the reasons why they're there, you know, like, for example, we were talking about ADHD earlier. So if we have a youth who's coming in and maybe they have like a really prominent crystal meth addiction and they're using every day and doing sex work, and I know we're getting off the topic of learning disabilities. When I was prepping for this, I was like, don't talk about drugs the whole time, Lynn. Do not talk about drugs, but I will try my hardest. Yeah, I know, I'm doing it. But for example, but then, you know, through some of the work that we do with them, they can understand, oh, well, maybe I've been using crystal meth so much partially because I have had this undiagnosed ADHD situation going on for me, and it's how I'm self-medicating so that I can stay focused throughout the day. You know, it's like, side note, not a great way to self-medicate for ADHD. Like, don't do it. But there are multiple reasons and multiple ways that people who are under-resourced can react and can, like, use whatever tools they have around them, oftentimes not necessarily in productive ways, to help mediate what's going on for them. So I think part of the work that we do is to help young people really understand some of the multiple reasons, some of the multiple factors why they may be presenting at our clinic, and that it's okay. Like, everyone here talked about shame, having shame, is sort of normalizing the experiences. Like, so many of the youth that I have worked with in my career have made the decisions that they've made in their lives, or have wound up where they are because they're trying to survive, and they're doing, like, the best that they can, and you know, they're doing. If I were them in their situations, I would have made similar decisions, you know. And so I think normalizing experiences, giving youth, including youth in their own healthcare, and making them decision makers in their healthcare, allowing them and supporting them to be informed and to be a part of a collaborative team that's working with them to help support their needs is huge. And I think that's what keeps youth coming to, at least to our clinic, because even though they may be working with like a team of social workers, nurses, psychiatrists, occupational therapists, they're central to the work, and we're taking our cues from them. And I think alongside that, and what some of the other folks on this panel talked about, we do really take peer support work very seriously. We recognize that the therapeutic power and importance of having peers on our staff team, and we do. And so, you know, we work with youth peer support workers. Most foundries also have family peer support workers present. So so individuals who are on the team who are family members of youth who have experienced mental health or substance use challenges in their lives. So we have those folks on our staff team to help guide us as well, and to help connect with young people just sort of right off the bat. And then, of course, we really try to meet youth in multiple ways. So Foundry we do walk-in, drop-in, we have formal appointments that people can make, we have online and virtual services available as well through Foundry BC, and we do support youth as much as possible, especially if they're experiencing anxiety about being in new spaces, to access services virtually. And then we also do have a pretty large range of groups, so youth can come in and just interact and hang out with other young people in the community to do fun stuff. That's therapeutic, and we have a pretty broad spectrum of services at our center where youth we have cooking groups, we have music groups, we have rec groups, we have therapeutic yoga groups, creative writing. We do a ton of groups, recognizing that part of what youth need in order to succeed is to build positive connections with other young people that are experiencing similar things. And so, you know, you have a group of a bunch of young people sitting in a room and all talking about I'm not talking about drugs. I'm not gonna talk about drugs. But oh, you hear voices? I hear voices too. And so having those kinds of experiences and normalizing that. I know that I'm talking about schizophrenia, or psychosis, but I think that's broadly across any sort of, mental health experience that youth are having, or that anyone's having. It's just so great to connect with other people that are experiencing similar things and be like, oh, well, you're cool, so it's all right.
Well said. Boys Club Network. I'm sure a lot of people wondering, what exactly is it? So rule number one, what's said in the room stays in the room, so I can't tell you what we talk about all the time, although I will a little bit. At its core, it's got a very simple premise. We meet in the same room of a school or a community once a week as a club. We also have a curriculum that's been approved by the Minister of Ed called Hope for Boys Leadership 11. Several schools offer it. They get 4 credits towards this leadership course, where they explore the attributes and characters of good men. And they come in, the first thing they do is they eat. So they have sandwiches or pizza. For all the boys, it settles them down to listen and pay attention. And for some of the boys, it may be the only meal of the day. And it's not unusual for us to send boys home with half a box of pizza for their siblings and others, but we know they're going to eat it on the bus on the way home. We get guest speakers quite often, men and women, who talk about their own lives. I jokingly call it the poor man's Oprah Winfrey Show. And these people talk about their own lives and things they experienced, broken families, overcoming cancer, making and losing a lot of money, whatever it is, adversity, and how they embrace that adversity and continue on in their lives to become the good people they are now. We don't define success specifically by finances, but by the character of the person and what they're doing in their lives today. We have millionaires and billionaires that talk to these guys, but we also have professional athletes, we have former gangsters, we have people from all walks of life, and generally speaking, without any prompting, they're pretty consistent in what they consider to be a good person. One of my favorite stories was a former Hell's Angel who came in and said, I'm not here to talk to you guys about what's right and what's wrong and what you should do to be a good man. You already know that. My question is, why do you choose one over the other? Why do you choose to either be a good person or a bad person? Because we all get to make that choice, no matter what you're going through in your life. You hear a pin drop in that room. We go on a lot of field trips. We have some amazing support around the province. The BC Lions are huge supporters, the Canucks, the Whitecaps. So we'll take boys to events like that. We have these guest speakers. And of course, we carve out a lot of time where the boys just sit in a circle and talk. And we talk about everything. We talk about, how do you define character? What does that look like? What do you do in your life on a daily basis that shows me that you have some character? I helped my mom do the dishes yesterday. I never did that before. I took my little sister to school. Whatever, and you just pat them on the back. That's all they're looking for. I wrote down the words connection and attachment. That's exactly what we're all about. They're connected and attached to this group. They know that when they walk into that room, and the first rule is what's said in the room stays in the room, and it's Dr. Steve Mathias that said to me that is critical, because really there's a lot of therapy happening in that room. Not that we're therapists, but there's a lot of power in the group. Somebody here said the tribe earlier, and that's what they're belonging to. I had a young boy today. We actually had this conversation today at one of our schools. I said, what do you like most about being in this group? And the one boy said, when I'm in here, I just get to be me, and people don't tell me I'm a loser. They don't say that I don't belong, and they don't push me out of the circle and tell me I have to eat lunch alone. And, that's powerful. So we talked earlier about the fact that boys and men commit 80% of suicides. Here's a safe place where they can talk. Where they can talk about everything, anything, and know that nobody will leave that door and repeat it. And in 20 years of working with this group, I can honestly tell you I haven't had to kick out one kid for talking about somebody else's issues. And stuff comes out, everything from how they're feeling. We had a boy 2 weeks ago tell one of our leaders he wanted to commit suicide. So there was that connection, that attachment, and that stopped that. We've had boys come out, saying I'm gay. One of my favorites was this young boy in summer camp. We run a summer camp as well. We're going through a circle, and tell us something that you learned this summer in summer camp, and what was your best moment? This one boy stood up, a big kid, good-looking kid, and he says, well, I just want to share with you guys that last night I told my parents that I'm gay. And one of the boys said, how'd it go? And he goes, not well. My dad told me to get out of the house and that I could come back when I screwed my head on tight. And my mom didn't say a word. And and what happened was, if you wrote this in a movie, they would tell you it had to cut it out because this doesn't happen in real life, but it happened. All 30 boys in that circle got up and hugged him. And one of the boys said, buddy, you're not alone. We're here for you. We're your family. And the kid was just crying. And then we could step in at that point. The one time we break the rule of what's said in the room stays in the room, and we tell the boys this every time, is if they say something where we are afraid they're either going to hurt themselves or hurt somebody else. And in that case, we intervened, obviously, and got that kid help, and things worked out in the long run, but it was a tough hoe. So here's a safe place for young guys to talk, just to talk. We did a survey last year, province-wide, because we wanted to do a review of our program. And we asked, what's your favorite boys club thing that we do? And I thought for sure it was going to be the field trips. I mean, you're going to a Lions game? You got field passes? Are you kidding me, right? And some of the guest speakers, I thought, oh, they're going to love these guys, because we've had some amazing guest speakers, men. And we just had an amazing woman. She's a CEO of Atomic Cartoons, one of the biggest film companies in North America. And Jenn McCarran, and the guys were blown away by her stories and her advice and the things she had to share with them, right? And I'm thinking that they're going to say that. No, you know what they said? When we get to sit in a circle and just talk. So that's what the Boys Club Network's all about. It's not some mystical, magical thing. It goes back to, as my wife Laura likes to say, it just goes back to ancient wisdom. It goes back to times when families and community raise each other's kids. It goes back to having a simpler life, having someone you can trust and talk to, and knowing that you don't have to eat lunch alone. So that's what we do for their mental health, and to make them feel good about themselves and feel good about where they belong in the world and feel good about being able to express themselves, which is all about mental health. Next question, if we have a little time. Okay. This one's kind of interesting for me, having been a school administrator and a teacher at one time, and there's educators here at the table. One of them has a Ph.D., I see. But one of the first stops for a lot of families, if there's an issue with their child, is the school. I'd say even more so than going to the doctor or other places. Like, we often will say, "Did you talk to your doctor?" "Oh God, no. You know, my kid's happy with this guy here or this lady there, and this is our rock. This is where we go." But it doesn't always turn out so well. So I'm reading a question that was sent in here, and I'd just like to get some response. I'm advocating for my 7-year-old son. His school has promoted so much school trauma and school refusal. My son's mental health and well-being has been negatively impacted since kindergarten. The school has such strong resistance to change their ways. I'm desperately asking for your help on how to communicate to the school better. So obviously someone who's not having a good experience with the school. It's always easy to tell the great stories where the school and the parents have the great experience. But I'm wondering, from our panel, when you're working with some of the people you're working with, you're sharing and that sort of thing, and I know you have to deal with this as I did, how do you facilitate or how do you advocate, and what can parents who are watching out here, how can they try and get the service they need, but also where are the boundaries and what's reasonable? And I know that's a very complex question, and I like to throw it out first to Lee, because I just happen to know that a youth worker does this every day.
Oh, goodness.
Trust with the school.
The school struggles with not having enough bodies to do enough work. They want to do more bodies, more work, more good work. They really want to do that. From administrators down to the custodians. They want to do good work. Let's just state that right out there. They're not given enough resources to do that. You can look at the schools. They plan a school. Somebody else further up the ladder will plan a school and say, well, you have X amount of bodies in this area. We'll give you this as a school. And then 4 years later, poof, it needs double the size and we got portables everywhere. So what does that do internally to the staff? They're struggling to look after everything. Administrators are trying to, the doors go open and close all the time. They've got 4 or 5 boys sitting out there going, well, what are we going to do with them, right? Did I take your microphone? I took your microphone, right?
That's not my microphone. It's
not your
our
microphone.
microphone.
Okay. You're really holding on
all
to that
in the
microphone.
name of mental health
Okay.
and wellness.
So we'll share the mental health and wellness around with the microphones. So thinking about, as a youth worker and working with the families and administrators and within the staff, is to find those things that will work and trying to navigate the system and linking outside with agencies that could provide possibilities and working through that. So if you have somebody who's really young, getting in there and linking and connecting with that family is important. Because the continuity over time, having been in the school system in New Westminster for a fair length of time, see, let's just call it 15 plus. The continuity of the parents and the youth seeing me in the system and having a good connection. Sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down, but there's a continuity. And then coming back to me later when that youth is like 23 and I bump into them at a metal works yard because I need a piece of metal for a project I'm working on at home and going, wow, you're like 6'5". Last time I seen you, you were like 4 foot nothing, right? And then we interact and he smiles when he sees me and he tells me a bit about what's going on, what happened with him. And what happened was he had connections. He made solid connections, and he got the help where he needed the help, and his parents were part of that circle. They had the help that they needed, and because they're often alone, the parents don't know where to go. If somebody gives them a business card, go check this out, but you actually need to go with them as a friend. Like the boys in a boys group, they're around them, held around them, so you need to do the same thing with the family, is you hold on to them and say, you're not alone. The moms, the dads who are running on their own, or they're running separately, but they want to take care of their children or the child. So you wrap them around best you can within the time you have, and you continue afterwards. So I have after work projects on my extra time and get them out there and resourced and get them connected. And then follow up. That's a big one. Not just, here's the door, see you later, but actually follow up and check on them and see how they're doing. Said they gone to another district, that kind of thing. I think I got off on a track.
Address the same issue?
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely want to echo Lee as well, is that schools do want to do a good job, and like any profession, most people in there are trying to do their very best, but it is very challenging with the complexity of schools, current funding models, class sizes, school compositions, the inability to fully staff, like find great qualified people in all positions at schools. I also know I work with so many families, and I'm so privileged to do that, but I also know a lot of families really struggle with how to effectively communicate with schools and teachers. And it is very, very easy, unfortunately, for families and schools to get into antagonist relationships due to sometimes miscommunications, misunderstandings, or a lack of shared goals, really, about what is the ideal experience, learning outcomes, inclusion, involvement of their child within the school system. And once that relationship between the family and the school or a teacher or administration becomes acrimonious, or once it doesn't start going well, it can snowball so quickly and in such unfortunate ways that really does not allow for the continued success of that child in that schooling system, and that's really unfortunate. So some ways in which that I and LDS really do try to support families is through, I routinely offer a workshop called How to Communicate. Actually the title of the workshop is What to Do When Learning Isn't Coming Easily. Sorry, that's the title. So, because often parents are like, I'm noticing something's not going well, but I don't know what it is. I don't know how to address it. I don't know how to have this conversation. I don't know what I can get for my child in this classroom, at the school, so that they have what they need. The workshop really talks about the school, the teacher, the setting, the system, and how parents can work to collaboratively work with the school, because you will always get more when you can work with the school than if you're trying to work against the school. It's not easy, and the school is not always right. I will be the first to say that, but having that collaborative relationship with the school will always get you more for your child than if it is not collaborative. We also offer a family coaching services, because often there are families who just do need help. They're like, is this right? This is what I've had from the school. This is my child's IEP. This is the conversation that I'm having with this. Is this accurate? Is this okay? And unfortunately, it's not always okay. And unfortunately, every day I'm engaged with families who absolutely need advocacy and support in navigating systems and for their children, because it is not going the way that it should. Inclusion BC is another great support for families. They as well, they have if you just search Inclusion BC, phone them. They can also help support families as well who are navigating challenges with IEPs, designations, schooling systems that are not fully including their child as well. They are provincially funded and accessible to anyone in BC as well too. So I definitely suggest finding supports or advocates, people that can come in. If you're having antagonistic conversations with the school, I'd suggest having a neutral or supportive party that can come in and help you. Because if it's about your child and someone is saying something about your child that you know is inaccurate, as a parent, it is almost impossible not to immediately be so upset that you can't even continue the conversation. And your child needs you to be that fierce advocate, but you also probably need someone helping you through the process who's slightly more detached, who can help you focus on not, they might have wronged you and your child, and that is not okay, but you actually want to focus on the result. So what needs to happen? The IEP is incorrect. That is not okay, but we want to fix it. This is what we want to see. The designation is incorrect, or what they're saying is incorrect. Okay, let's put that down. Where do we move forward? And that's where parents often really need support, and it can be tricky to find.
Can I jump in on that one? Thanks for that, Jen. I got these little, I don't know if it'll work like that. Thank you for that little bit of a connection. Working with the middle school, Indigenous folks have a real hesitation coming into the box.
For good reason.
For many reasons. Obviously, the common ones being colonial, punishing, all sorts of negative things that they have in regards to coming into the box. Trying to find a way to connect with a family. Recently worked with the school counselor to try to connect two families who are having, the school was having difficulty trying to figure out what to do with these students who weren't fitting inside the box. So with some brainstorming and thought, we came up with a neutral spot off-site. What was that going to be? I thought, well, just a coffee shop. You can't have things at a coffee shop, right? You can't talk about stuff at a coffee shop. So we go to the park. It's going to be noisy. Things going to happen. There's going to be stuff. So what we thought about was the CUPE union office, and it was open, big old table. And they said, if you want to use it for that, please do. So what we did was, the CUPE union office was really close by. Yay, excellent, just by circumstance. And it was a big table. We arranged the time and had the two families come together, the two parents come together, and talk about strategies. So we took the aversion to coming into the box, the colonial structure to coming into that, and taking it off-site. So we have an opportunity of neutral ground to talk about things that they weren't going to talk about inside the school. And there's an acrimonious situation in regards to the school. So now we have the start of something, possibilities for these students, whether it's continuing in the mainstream or whether it's going alternate to find a different avenue, or maybe a different school that could be better suited for them. Not to make them go away, but simply providing choices and supporting the parents and building community within the families. That was a big one. That was a big one the council and I were really focusing on, which is building the community with them. Because you know, in our urban settings in the city, how many communities do you see? Not many. Unless you have large houses and there's a big community, you can see a cultural, you can see it. But if you look in Vancouver, you look in New West, it's very diverse. It's all over the place. So there's no real connections. So for Indigenous students, we really don't want to have that connections, and I assume it's going to go across the spectrum of students they want to be connected, like the boys do. So definitely having a neutral zone, a neutral place to start having conversations is really important. Thanks, Jen.
I've got a question here I'd like to throw out to the entire panel, and maybe you could answer from your own perspectives of the kind of work that you do and why you're here today. And I think it kind of covers everything, but I think each would have a slightly different approach to this question. The question is how to navigate your healing journey while others close to you do not understand or think you are not doing it right. I know what is best for me, but struggle with feeling like it's not good or fast enough and being a burden to those around me. Can we start at the end of the table or work our way all the way across here?
Wow, that's a very big question. I mean, I can also talk to my own personal lived experience. So I actually am a presenter for the Stigma-Free Society as well, and I have 2 learning disabilities. I have dyslexia and dyscalculia, and I have generalized anxiety disorder. And I have struggled a lot over the years talking about my own personal experience and the things that have been successful in helping me overcome obstacles and the things that have not worked. And I think overcoming the stigma around feeling like you're a burden to other people or that you're not on the right path or not doing the right things is really, really difficult. And there's no one size fits all for healing and for figuring out what works for you and when it comes to having a learning difference or having a mental health challenge or the ways that those things often overlap. And I think for me, what's been very helpful is talking about it and sharing my story with other people and connecting with other folks who, you know, have different experiences, have similar experiences. And personally, I feel like therapy has been very helpful for me. I'm a big advocate for therapy if you can get access to it, which I know is not always the case for everyone, but finding what works for you and sticking to that and just kind of being really committed to your own healing process, I think can be a really hard thing to navigate, but I think it's kind of the best way forward. And acknowledging that, you know, what works for me might not work for everyone else. And being in nature is really helpful for some people, and exercise is helpful for some people, and talking about it or writing it down. And I think finding that formula that makes you feel good and that makes your path a little bit more easy is the way to do it. And that also works for learning differences. I mean, I've had to navigate through a lot of different schooling environments, and having the diagnoses that I have has been very challenging. And prior to my diagnoses, I really felt a lot of shame and really didn't know how to reach out for help and who to reach out to. And it created a lot of anxiety for me. And that's kind of how my anxiety journey started, was before my diagnosis, and not really knowing what was wrong and what was going on and why I couldn't do certain things that seemed so easy for my peers. And then once I had that diagnosis, I felt really empowered to advocate for myself and to learn how to speak up for myself. And that's something that I still struggle with. It's hard to be vulnerable. It's hard to share those things. And, you know, like, there are certain things that I can't do or really need help to do. And it's embarrassing at times to feel like I'm a full adult human woman who can't do certain things that, you know, I feel like I should be able to do. But part of my healing journey personally has just been learning how to share that, and learning how to advocate for myself, and learning how to ask for help, which is hugely overwhelming and really, really scary. And something that I really try to advocate young people learn how to do is to learn how to ask for help and to speak up for themselves when their needs aren't being met. And I think just finding whatever works, and people you trust, building a community around you who support you and understand that you have maybe certain things that are going to be a struggle for you, and they may need to be a bit more patient with you than they may need to be with other folks in their lives, and just making sure that you really stick to that path and really commit to whatever it means to you to heal. I think that's kind of it.
Oh, well said. Well said. Thank you for sharing your personal story too.
Was that a question that came in?
Yes.
Because that's
Yes.
first, I just want to acknowledge that's a massive question, and that takes a lot of guts. So congrats. And also, the self-awareness is amazing. I think it's great that you're realizing that you're ready to be on this healing journey. And healing isn't linear. Like, I tell people all the time, I'm like, it's like the gym. You can go to the gym, you can walk around, but if you're not lifting the weights, if you're not doing the work, you're not going to see the work. So, and it's something you have to work at every day. And it's not to scare people being like, you got to do this every day. It's just, it becomes a routine. And the fact that you're ready to do this, but you're also seeing that, you're noticing that maybe people aren't supporting you, or you're feeling like a burden. Again, the self-awareness is amazing. So I just want to congratulate you on that. But the best thing that I can say for you is learning boundaries. And the more you learn about setting boundaries for yourself or other people, and the more boundaries you set, you will feel so empowered. Like, you will be able to feel less of a burden because you are in control of setting these boundaries, because you're doing this for yourself, right? You're not doing this for other people. I'm somebody who tried to be somebody else for a very, very long time. And I can tell you it didn't work out well. And it's one of the lowest points of my life, when I was just trying to be somebody I'm not. So you trying to, maybe appease these people or not feel like a burden, it's not going to work out for you. I can promise you that. So just know in the back of your mind, you're doing this for yourself, and it will work out better. And maybe these people, they'll come to you. Like, they will. If they're people that support you and do love you, when they see you doing the work, when they see you healing, when they see you just being your best self, the people that love you and trust you, they will come. At first, it's like, we're in such a special time right now where therapy and mental health, you have to remember that, past generations, it wasn't something we always talked about, right? You got to think of, if I asked my parents or even their parents what we thought about therapy, it was like a no word. And now we're in a generation where it's like, you go to therapy. Or just like, oh, you have a learning disorder? Like, everything. So we just talk about it more. So I tell people all the time, patience. You're on your healing journey. Let those people, when they're ready, they will accept you. And if not, it's for the best. And I know that hurts, but just remember, you're doing this for yourself, and I promise you, will be worth it. Set those boundaries and advocate for yourself. And I'm really proud of you, whoever sent in that message.
Unfortunately, I have nowhere near as anything as profound to share, but I just think an important point to point out is that for anyone who's joining virtually in person, who doesn't have a learning difference or who doesn't struggle with mental health, that you also, I invite you to go on a journey of unlearning what you think that you know about people's experiences and about what is to be expected, what is reasonable, what hardworking looks like, what effort looks like, what someone's journey looks like, because your experience is valid to you, but it doesn't allow you, if you hold that to be the truth and that is the goal and that is what everyone should be doing, you're probably actually unintentionally harming other people with those expectations or this idea of what someone else's journey should be. So I hold myself to this standard, and I invite other people to as well, that if you're not consistently unlearning some of the problematic truths that you hold about other people's experience, that you're not actually able to be a really effective ally and help other people who are on the journey of trying to move past stigma and shame and reclaim their learning and experiences and journeys as valid and beautiful experiences. So I just invite everyone in this room and joining online to continue your journey, whether that is healing or unlearning, because we're better when we do this together.
Cool. Can you do that question again for me?
Yeah.
Because there's so much being shared. It's getting kind of...
The question is, how do you navigate your healing journey while others close to you do not understand or think you are not doing it right? I know what is best for me, but I struggle with feeling like it's not good or fast enough and being a burden to those around me.
You have wisdom. You have your lived experience that you already have. You may not have a Ph.D. You may not have already gone to the moon. You may not have already purchased your Mercedes, your Audi already. You may not have that wonderful house on the North Shore or whatever, but you do have your wisdom. You do have what applies to you in this moment today. And what you are today is from that, what you've learned, the things that caused you to go left and right. Like one day you were at the park, and instead of just going and joining your friends and playing some soccer, you chose to sit on a rock and look at some flowers, or vice versa. I was bored, and then my friend showed up, but then there was that person, and I said, skip it. So all these things that connect us and bounce us around through life, there's a purpose in it. So what I'm saying to the question and the person who sent the question is, take your wisdom in that you have today. Be in the moment today. Give yourself space for today. Hold space for yourself. So that way you can recognize yourself and where you're at and the value that you bring. Leverage those skills. You've got some skills. You have some. If you're 10, you have skills. If you're 30 or 36, you have skills. If you're older or younger, you have those skills. So leverage those skills to take yourself forward. And I think somebody was talking about you'll be surrounded by people that like it. Somebody teaches math here. Who teaches math? We're at the beginning where there's some people in the audience, they teach math, and then they have a person that they're involved with that teaches math. So they teach math together, and then they have math on their children. So what I'm getting to is people will be drawn to your wisdom and your skills that you have already, whether you're 10 or you're 100. Leverage those and bring them with you and recognize them.
Yeah, it's kind of a hard question in some ways, I guess, because I don't really, there's no context and I don't know the full situation. And I think if the mic had started at this end with me, I would have said something like what you all said at that end. But but I'm just going to be contrary and offer a different perspective because I'm like that a little.
Talk about drugs.
I'm going to fist bump. Pardon? But I
Don't
won't
talk
talk about
about
drugs.
drugs.
I won't talk about drugs. And my perspective, which, yes, 100% I agree with everything that everyone said here, completely. And also, yeah, of course, or I'd be in the wrong place. Yeah. But I also want to offer the perspective that having worked with many young people with pretty serious mental health challenges, sometimes if you're in that mode for quite a long time, your insight can be limited. So I think the alternate perspective I want to offer is, along with what everyone else here said, which is what I agree with, if everyone else in your life is offering a contrary perspective, then maybe it is also important to consider those perspectives because they might be seeing something that you're not. And if you're not well, and if you're really not well, then your insight might actually be quite limited about what your capacity is, the way you're behaving or the way you're tackling the challenges in your life or the way that you're interacting with the people or the things that are confronting you. So maybe everything that they're saying is bogus and you can be like, whatever. But maybe it's important to incorporate some of their perspectives if they're the people that know you the best and have been supporting you through your life, and to consider that as well. So that's my contrary input.
I think that's a balanced input, and I think you're absolutely right. I think obviously we have some people here who have had a very challenging journey, and they're capable and competent and researched and informed and all those things. But I think most of us, me included, have family members or people we love or are close to that are not reasonable, balanced, or will see that, and we know that there's an issue, and they're not listening. And the big fear is that they're going to become one of those people that are going to do something really bad, and it won't be best for them or their families or the ones around them. So I appreciate your perspective. I think it is both. The only thing I would say is if you are on a correct sort of the wrong way, if you're on a journey that seems to be working for you, but not the timeline of somebody else, that's their issue. You know, I love the Stoics, Marcus Aurelius. I love his quotes, and 2,000 years ago, and they still resonate today. And I'm butchering it, but he says something like that. He says, as long as you are trying to please others, you will never be free. And so you have to decide whether or not what you're doing is right for you, and to listen to people if there's a consensus that's telling you that maybe you need to consider another option or path because they do care for you, right? So there is a difference, and we could talk for hours about that, I think, as well. There's one question here that was directed for you, but I'm going to share it with the group here because the question was really an inquiry as to how people could access your organization. So I think the same question would go for, well, you're in a school system, we know. Yeah. No, you're one of a kind, brother. Oh, yeah. But as we go through, how do they access you? How do they access you? How do they access you? And there was a question around cost. Can you just walk in off the street if you're going to go to the Foundry? Is there a cost to come to your organization or yours? That kind of thing. So I wonder if we could just rifle through the group on that, because a lot of people are writing notes and saying, "Is this something that's going to cost a lot of money, or can I get that help?" And where can they find you very quickly too? Because I know you guys are in at least 7 or 8 different communities, if not more. Yeah, and growing, and you guys have spread around all over the place, and we're all over BC now too. So why don't we start with you?
Do they say what community they're writing in from?
I can read you the question. Can one access Foundry services without a referral from a medical professional? Can one just walk in and access the groups? Do you need a referral for psychology, counseling services? Is there a cost?
So there's no cost at all. It's publicly funded, and so that's one answer to one question. And yes, you can just access services. I think I can't speak to every community in the province. My understanding is that definitely some services at every Foundry you can just walk in and access. So I can speak to Foundry Vancouver. So we do have walk-in, drop-in primary care services. So you can see a nurse practitioner, a GP, or a nurse Monday to Friday, 1 to 4:30 is drop-in hours. It's first come, first serve. It's very busy. Know that. We have walk-in counseling, so you can come in and see a nurse or a social worker on a drop-in basis, Tuesday to Friday, 1 to 4:30. And so we have counseling services. You can drop in and see. You can drop into our groups. So we have psychosocial rehab groups that are offered throughout the week. And you can find out more about the groups either by dropping in and getting a calendar, or you can just call the front desk. In terms of like more specialized psychiatric services, you do need a referral to see psychiatry for shared care. You would need a referral to access our intensive case management services. You need a referral to see psychology. We do have like a supported work and education program that you do need a referral for as well internally. Only because the waitlist is so long, but provincially, Foundry Works in Education is a program that that you can access in your community just by. Most centers don't have a waitlist, but we're one center in Vancouver, and so we're so busy. But I think in smaller centers, most of these services won't have waitlists, and you can just access. So a great number of the things that at our center that you want to access are drop-in. are no wait lists and are free. And so I'm sorry to all of my colleagues right now. But that's how it is, and that's how Foundry should be. It's meant to be low barrier, and we're meant to serve people. That's the whole point of it, is that youth can access, no matter what they're experiencing, and receive support that's tailored to their needs, and that's how it's supposed to be in every community. The reality, of course, in healthcare, as you know, can be quite different, but we do endeavor to do it.
Where can they find out where your different locations are?
Foundry, I think foundrybc.ca website. There's also Foundry Virtual, which offers like a range of services, so youth can access from rural and remote communities that don't have a Foundry, like a brick and mortar Foundry center. And Foundry Virtual has all the same services that the brick and mortar centers have as well. So you can even access primary care, I think, now through Foundry Virtual. It's pretty extensive.
Thank you. Sure. Sir.
Well, you know where you can find me.
Can we go back, though?
Okay.
Where can families find people in your role and with the kind of support that you offer in their own towns or districts?
Well, definitely within the school system, youth workers tend to be in the middle school range and higher. They tend to be itinerant within the elementaries, and you'll find support workers within the elementaries that can link up. And the support workers there do the role at the elementary school level really well. Again, there's not enough resources within the school system, so they tend to be itinerant. So you may go, whoa, only once a week or twice a week. So that is something as a challenge, and it continues to be, because we just need a couple $100 more, that kind of thing, figuratively speaking. We just need more stuff in the system. But to get a hold of me, you just have to look for, or myself, or colleagues like myself. They're within the system. There's just not many of us. Again, going back to staffing. Where do we put the money, right? That's going to be one of those juggling effects that administrators and superintendents have to go with. Where do we put everybody, right? So that's a little bit about the school system. I think that answers your question, right?
And just on that too, that alternate programs or alternate schools or independent schools that are special education school designations also tend to have higher numbers of youth workers, support workers to teaching staff as well too. So different types of schooling models will have different levels of diversified staff as well too. So just, yeah. And all districts that I'm aware of in BC have alternate schooling programs at the high school level, as well as distributed learning programs, and there are multiple ways to access schooling from almost all districts. So if you're really struggling with your current school, I would suggest looking at the district level about options and programs that might be a better fit for your child. Very quickly about LDS, we are also try to be very low barriers, so we work with students with or without diagnoses, so there's no need to have a diagnosis or a formal assessment to access us. We operate on a sliding fee scale, all our programs, so our programs are based on family income to make them highly accessible, and we do have some programs that are at no cost as well too for families depending on the program and the barriers families are facing. We are located in Vancouver. We also have a location north Vancouver. We have some satellite programs running in community centers. We have a mobile classroom, and we have online programs that run throughout all of BC. So we have learners everywhere in the entire province, and we work with currently about 500 families across the province. So lots of ways to access and tap into the supports, resources, programs, and amazing humans that make up LDS and support the students who need it most.
My services are free. You don't have to pay anything. Please enjoy. Willow Faith, Willow_Faith on Instagram, Willow Faith on YouTube, and Willow Faith 0 on TikTok. But yeah, I make content, like I said, about LGBTQ, really being out in nature. My healing journey, I'm doing a lot of healing journey for my inner child right now, and I've just been outside playing, and it's been great. Having some really good conversations, and then some fun stuff as well. It's not always so serious. As well, I was on a reality TV show, if you want to watch that. It's called Big Brother Canada, and sometimes I like people to watch it because you can see me. One, I went in there straight. I didn't know really who I was. I was trying to be someone I wasn't, and I was trying to fit into a box, and you can see I'm actually battling severe depression there. But it's good for people to see this because if I don't tell you this, you might not know this. And then after Big Brother, that's when I really start to come out of my shell and be myself. And it's cool to look back now that I can actually watch myself literally turn into who I am today. At first it was a little traumatizing, but now it's a great thing that I can go back and literally watch episodes of me come out and be who I am and talk about some hard things in my childhood and mental health. So yeah, but Will of Faith, it's free.
We are also free. Look at that. Yeah, so resources for everyone. So Stigma-Free is all virtual. All of our programming happens online. So do our presentations. So they're all virtual and live, and that's how we can be in classrooms all across the country. And the presentations are entirely free to book, as is our student mental health toolkit. So you can just like register for free access and just sign up and give us your email, and we won't bombard you, we promise, but you get free access to all of our resources, which includes lesson plans and downloadable resources, resources for parents, guardians, caregivers, educators, school counselors, mental health for school staff themselves. So lots of incredible resources, and it's all online and it's all free. So studentmentalhealthtoolkit.com is where you can find the toolkit.
Fantastic. Wow, a lot of free stuff here today. And if you look under your chairs, that's the running gag tonight, I think. But in all seriousness, I think it was an amazing evening, and I hope the audience learned as much as I did. Thank you very much, panel. Every one of you brought some incredible knowledge and depth and hope, I think, to our audience here tonight. I'd like to also thank Sarah Walker and Rachel Forbes and Jenn Fane, who hosted this event here tonight and pulled it all together. And to our amazing crew over here, thank you guys, and thank you for making it happen and sharing this with the country. I think we'll have to do it again. Good night, everybody.